Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined by Ali Moreno and Stevie Nicol. A lot of talk over the last couple of days, obviously, about Isak, big moves, Guehi not happening. And we've kind of been lost in the process a little bit. Manchester City being rubbish. Let's remind you of how bad they've been, shall we? When we take a look at the table, they currently sit 13th in the Premier League. Won against Wolves, all was rosy. Then, of course, lost against Spurs and then Brighton. And they currently sit in the bottom half of the table. Why are we so jovial about Manchester City struggling? Not because Marc Ogden's here, but look who else joins us. The man who told us, of course, pre-season that everything was fixed, everything was sorted. He predicted Manchester City to win the league, ladies and gentlemen. Nedum joins us.
Yeah, that's it. And unfortunately, going to finish 13th for whatever it is that you said. And I know you, Dan Thomas, as well. You said Gyökeres was going to be top scorer. Arsenal going to win the league. So I'm sure you'll have something to say soon as well. But yes, I think it's fair to say that last game for Man City and the Spurs one as well. You know, this isn't what we thought we would be seeing. And obviously, there was an overreaction in some ways to the Wolves game itself. But now we're sort of caught in a position to where for City, this next game, which happens to be a Manchester derby, almost feels like a must-win for the energy around the football club. Because you're seeing the signing of, say, like a Donnarumma, which is like a bit strange. Like, why is he coming in? You're seeing him going and performing so badly in that second half against Brighton. And you just hope, well, I hope anyway, that there's an element of stability here. Because one thing for sure across the last few years, if they would lose a game, I'd back them to not lose the next one. But at the moment, I'm really not sure at all. And I've not felt like this for a little while now.
What's disappointed you most? Not in life, with City in general, Nedum.
Well, City is life, so I can understand why you'd ask that question in that manner. But I think from the Spurs one, I've seen City lose games to Spurs before, but the manner in which they lost that first time it felt strange because Spurs were very deserving of that. And then in the second game that they lost against Brighton, it was the fact that they went from being in a position where it felt like they were in control, they had the lead, and then all of a sudden they were just being outrun. Brighton were really taking it to them, and James Trafford's having to make big saves. And I thought previously with City, they'd be better at holding on to a lead. And yes, being able to suffer, because realistically, Brighton are a good side, especially at home. But the fact that all of a sudden they're being essentially outplayed and they can't create anything, but the other team can create anything whenever they want, you know, that to me is a bit of a concern. And I thought it wouldn't necessarily be like that in these first few games. And now, as we say, because of the last two results, like how important is that Manchester derby at home? If United get a result here against City, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we heard boos in the stadium. That's the sort of magnitude of this game, which comes so early at a point where realistically it doesn't matter. But a loss certainly would matter because, you know, people would be asking real significant questions. You're seeing some chances be afforded to the opposition, and teams know how to play against them when they're in that sort of moment. Because for City, as is the case with some of the other teams up there, they don't really like to just close up the ranks defensively. And as a consequence, teams will have chances and they have that belief to go up against them. You know, this is the Brighton side that beat them last year in Brighton as well. So I think you can see that teams look at them in a different light when they do gain that momentum. The crowd was up, they knew the game was in their favour. And in fairness to them, it came when those substitutions happened, and to be able to have that and to have that feeling, credit to Brighton, but it's an alarm bell for City because they just never adjusted.
How does he fix it? Can he fix it, Nedum?
I think he's just going to have to quit. I think the players are all going to have to quit as well, cancel the season. There's nothing to be seen here. It's going to be the worst season in history, Dan Thomas.
Isn't he? He is feisty today.
Yeah, I am. Just because, listen,
the reason is obviously we saw this last season and he couldn't fix it.
Yeah, I think it's different to last season because the position that they're in now is whereby like the players that he'll be selecting for the next game are probably of a higher sort of less standing in terms of the ones that they were selecting in that spell where they struggled, because they was picking some players in certain positions. Like this is how we saw Matheus Nunes starting playing right back, for example, or you saw the youngster in Jemai Simpson-Poussey is at Celtic now, you know, playing centre back in games against Brighton, for example, away from home last season. So I don't doubt that, you know, he will find a way to get through it. But it's interesting he's got different voices around him now. Not necessarily to say the Colo Torre side of it, but Pep Lijnders. Pep Lijnders might see this in a slightly different way to the way Guardiola does. How do the two come together to create something that's going to suit those players and suit the moment for City in any particular time? So I think it's interesting because you don't know how it's going to go. You don't know who's going to be playing in net. And as a consequence, that element of stability, which we've seen for many years now, all of a sudden you're a little bit unsure. And it comes at a time when teams really know that they're there for the taking every so often.
Do you know, you're talking about desire there. I kind of agree with Nedum that it's not the desire that's the problem. It's the direction in which way they're going to use this desire and the will to try and change things. And 100% in the Spurs and the Brighton game, when things needed changing, they looked as though they didn't have any clue what to do.
Right.
And that's down to the coach. You know, you have to have certain plans in place where if we're up against it, this is what we do. If we can't get the ball, this is what we do. But when they were getting outrun and outplayed, they had no idea what to do. And that would be the biggest worry for me.
I think we have seen so much success over the years with Manchester City and Pep Guardiola that our default reaction following last season is, or was, he's going to figure it out.
Rodri will be back.
They're going to figure it out. They're going to be okay. This team will get it right. And we saw some of those early performances, and I'll go as far back as the Club World Cup and thinking, well, maybe there's something here. And all this optimism that comes from having observed this team and their success over the last few seasons, as much success as they have had, all of that optimism started to disappear once you watch them play against Al Hilal and watch how they struggle defending counter-attack opportunities and how they struggle maintaining quality possession of the ball and how they struggle in creating opportunities and putting those opportunities away, because it took you right back to the middle of last season. But there's still that optimism, and you kind of go, all right, well, you know, it's a Club World Cup, so we can dismiss that. There were some positive signs. They're going to build momentum. They're going to get it right. It's Pep Guardiola. They play against Wolves, and you kind of think, yeah, all right, okay. And then the last couple of games have come around, and it's, once again, going right back to Al Hilal, going right back to the middle of last season. And so to Nedum's point, in which he's trying to frame it as if things are different now, it's hard to make that argument that things are different now or significantly different now than what they were in the middle of last year.
To Nedum's point, Steve, you've been there obviously. How much of a difference does assistant coaches actually make when you're Pep Guardiola?
Huge. Because players, in general, don't want to go up to the coach, you know, and they will go through the assistants. And so they are absolutely huge. And they're also huge, the assistants, in terms of being able to turn round to Pep and say, we need to do this. If we keep doing this, this is going to happen again. Or if we don't do this, then that's going to happen. And the question is, Pep Lijnders, has he been there long enough? Does he know Pep enough to turn around and say, no, we need to change that? I'm not so sure.
Among the things that they need to change, and it's not easy to change because you cannot manufacture this. You have to see it out on the field and you have to go through successful times. They're at their best. Manchester City had a certain level of confidence and swagger about the way that they played the game. That there's an expectation that they were going to dominate possession, that they were going to create chances, they were going to score goals. And regardless of some of the frailties that they may have had defensively, they were not concerned about that because of how good they were in the middle of the park and how good they were offensively. There is no confidence and there is no swagger. And the only way, as I just mentioned, that you achieve that or try to get a hold of that is by seeing consistently good performances out on the field. And the one thing that I think we can all agree, regardless of whether you support this team or not, is that they haven't been consistently good for a long period of time.
Nedum?
No, I think that's fair. And I think the points that everyone's making, I think they are right fair in themselves. And I think this season, you look at, say, those first few games, and you're seeing someone like a James Trafford in goal, who's a good goalkeeper, and I think will be like an England international. But you're wondering, well, how does he fit in with this City side? I think you saw in the Spurs game how, like, he's trying to do the things the right way for what the system needs, but he's not going to do it the same way that, say, Edison did, because I think Edison took City to a whole new level. And then you look into the midfield, you look at combinations that are starting to be created, and they haven't been great. But I think what I would lean towards is, like, there's an element of stability that will come now, as is the case with teams up and down the land, in knowing which players are going to be there. There's not a case of, well, someone's discontent, or is this guy going to play? Is that guy not going to play? I think that stability is going to make a difference for the way that they approach games from this point forward. And I think with Lijnders and with these other people, yes, it's been a tough start for them, a disappointing start. I don't think it's all been negative. I think there have been certain spells where maybe they've done better than, you know, we've probably given them credit for, like perhaps the first half against Brighton. But there are alarming signs there. But I think the coaching staff with Guardiola at the helm is going to look at that over these next 2 weeks and make sure that when those players come back, and by the way, a lot of those players aren't jaded by that middle part of last season because quite a few of them didn't play. I think they can have a more positive mindset than, say, we do, because we try and refer back to a time when essentially they were horrendous, but I just don't think they're in that position now at all.
What's been the fans' reaction to Donnarumma, Nedum?
It's a strange one, to be honest, and I think it's more so because I think, obviously, I can't speak on behalf of every Man City fan, and some people say, "Oh, that's only like 10 of them." Yeah, don't care. I think the thing that's interesting is you see Donnarumma get released by PSG because, get released by PSG, and you hear it's to do with the style of play that he has. Here you have a coach in Luis Enrique who you feel is very similar to Pep Guardiola. And style of play is a big deal for them because that dictates how they put forward a plan for a team to be successful. And they wanted to move in a different direction. They bring in Chevalier, who they believe is better with his feet and has other traits which probably suit the moment for PSG. And that's them as like European champions or Champions League winners rather. So I think for him to then come across to a Pep Guardiola side isn't something that we expect to see because we've seen for all the years that he's done well at City, like the goalkeeper is an integral part of that, but not just in terms of shot stopping, but in terms of building attacks. I think Ederson's got more assists than, say, any goalkeeper in the history of the Premier League, and it's not even close. Well, I don't see that from Donnarumma, but then you read it up now and it's about leadership and so on. All that stuff's great, but the problem is you've brought back James Trafford. James Trafford was come in, and relatively speaking, he's done well. In that time, as I say, few people think he's going to be potentially starting for England in the future at some point. This is a huge prospect. This is a big investment.
I just don't think City have got the players. I think over the last maybe 2-3 windows, every player that they've replaced, with maybe the exception of Donnarumma, has been inferior to the one that he's replaced. So, you could say that Marmoush and Julian Alvarez were maybe on a par, but the rest of them, I don't see any player that City have signed in the last 12 months that has been better than a player that he's replaced. I think that probably goes back to when they signed Erling Haaland in, 2022. Since then, City haven't been the City that we all got to know that bought the very best players available. They've kind of quietly downgraded their transfers in terms of recruitment. So James Trafford was an example of that. James Trafford is promising, he's one for the future, but he's not one of the best in the world. Donnarumma is, but Donnarumma has strengths and weaknesses, and his weaknesses, I think, will have a big say in how Man City play because it'll be completely different to how they played with Ederson in goal.
Oggy, why didn't they buy a right back?
Well, they did. They bought Kuzhinov in January.
But
yeah, good question. Exactly. But no, I mean, listen, they looked at other areas, but they felt that in January they did their business, but it's clear that they didn't do their business because obviously Kuzhinov isn't good enough. Mateus Nunes was filling that role, isn't good enough. But the question is, who do you go for? Who do you try and sign? They brought in a left back, and they thought that Aït-Nouri was the answer there, and he may well be. But I just think City have they basically left it a window or two too late to replenish the squad, and they suddenly found themselves with too much to do. And I've been surprised at how many have gone. I mean, I was surprised that Akanji left. I think Akanji could have done a job at right back and the centre half. There were worse defenders than Akanji at the club, but they've left it a bit too late to get rid of players, and they've left it too late to get players in. And all of a sudden, they had 7 or 8 signings to make, and they've not been able to do it. And obviously, Liverpool have had a massive churn, but they've done it from a position of strength, a position of certainly wealth in the market in the sense that they've got a lot of prize money coming in. They've kind of offloaded a lot of players for big fees. City haven't done that, and they've had a few bad windows now.
Still going to win the league, Nedum?
Yeah, sure. Let's disregard these first 3 games. Never happened. Season always starts after the September international break. And if they're bad in that next section, the season always starts after the October international break. If that doesn't work, I'll go work for somebody else.
They've got your picks as well. Florian Wirtz is doing well, but we won't go with that. Manchester United 6th, I suppose, an interesting one. Should we focus on Manchester United a little bit now, I think? What we want to talk about, Nathan, one thing before we go to United is Guehi, and I'm just wondering what you make of that situation and whether he should have played it differently.
This is a really good question because I think externally people are saying he handled it really well, but they're seeing that in comparison to, say, the way Isak's had his move come across. But for Guehi, we don't know what he's like on a day-to-day basis, what he's been speaking to the manager like, what he's been like around the group and so on. And he's been a captain and he's been very, very professional. You see those sort of like clips to where like he's a bit dissenting of the manager in some ways. But I think he'll be hugely disappointed because I think as a player, from when your head is turned, it's very, very hard to then turn back and say everything's fine, especially when it's your club that pull you back in. So I think for him, he's not said much. He's just going to carry on business as usual. But if he thought that the Liverpool move was there, I think we're going to see a different Marc Guehi between now and potentially this January transfer window, because now there could be a hint of resentment towards his employer in Crystal Palace. And I think it's in some ways a shame that it didn't work out for him. But then also, I couldn't see him starting week in, week out for Liverpool. I didn't see it. So maybe in some ways this could be a beneficial thing for him in the year leading up to a World Cup, yes. But to be playing for a club like Liverpool, who will be going for a Premier League title, who will be playing in the Champions League, who will be attempting to win everything that they possibly can, I think for him to get a chance to elevate himself to that level would have been great for him. But unfortunately, Crystal Palace decided otherwise.
First time you've been on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Since this went south?
Yeah, disappointed. And I heard so many reports that it was done. He'd done his medical. I heard all of these things.
All your sources?
All my sources done, yes. And then all of a sudden it was, well, it's off. They'll let him go. So, yeah, I'm absolutely gutted. Had this gone through, it would have been the perfect window. I mean, he just wouldn't have gotten any better. But it didn't. And, you know, I guess Guehi's shown others that this is how you do it and this is how you deal with it. And I'm a little bit like Nedum, that when you think you're going and then all of a sudden at the last second the rug's pulled away from you, that's a tough one. That's going to be a test of what this guy's made of, and we will see what he's made of. And I would suggest that you'll probably see the same Guehi between now and January.
Right.
Because I think Liverpool will be back in January. Again, others may be back in January as well.
Well, that's the problem. The links Real Madrid has been the latest one that's been linked to Guehi, and I suppose, given that it's another 6 months, and depending what happens, obviously between now and then, Mark, more suitors will be on the market.
Yeah, but Marc Guehi made it pretty clear to Crystal Palace all through the summer that the only club that he was prepared to leave for was Liverpool. So he was more than happy to run his contract down and leave as a free agent next summer. So it might not move in January. He might decide that the best thing for him is to stay at Palace until the summer and move as a free agent, like, you know, Trent Alexander-Arnold did last year at Liverpool. So, you know, Liverpool might have other priorities in January. They might decide that, you know, Konate is okay for the rest of the season. Obviously, it looks like Konate's situation with this contract is similar to Guehi. He's not signing a new contract. He's out of contract in the summer. So there are a lot of options, but I wouldn't be surprised if Guehi does stay at Palace until the summer and then see what offers are on the table. You know, he could go to the World Cup, have a great tournament. He could, like the guys say, have Real Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool, Arsenal. He could take his pick of the club. So I don't think he's rushing. He's been fairly patient all the way through the summer. He's not pushed hard. He's not tried to force his way out, because I think he knows that he's got a strong hand at the end of the season. But listen, the guys will tell you that if you're a footballer, you move when you can, because you never know what happens in 6 months. You might get a bad injury, and that could cost him his move. So he'll have to be pragmatic about it. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does stick to the summer and say, you know, let's see what's on the table.
It does, you feel, leave Liverpool's back line quite fragile, Nedum?
Yeah, I suppose it does, but I think we're probably looking at that through the eyes of like how at times they've looked not at their best. Obviously against Arsenal was different, but the previous two games it did look a little bit more shaky. And I think if it wasn't for, say, Van Dijk having to carry the load a few times, then, you know, the situation could have potentially been worse. But I think in years gone by, we've seen a Konate and Van Dijk defensive partnership be as good as any partnership in England and probably around Europe as well. So I think the fact that like Guehi, someone of that profile, is potentially being linked with coming in, you know, that does say that maybe there could be one or two issues here. But I think for now they'll definitely be able to find a way. And in good health with Frimpong, Conor Bradley and so on coming back in. And as we can see, there are variations of players who can play back there, like Szoboszlai, for example, or Curtis Jones. I think they'll be able to make do. But I think they expect a higher standard from the people who are going to be playing back there, because they have had their moments which haven't been great. But we know that when they are at their best, then they're as good as anybody.
It's interesting for Liverpool now, isn't it? You spend $3 billion and nothing is guaranteed.
No. And I've said it a million times, Dan. You know, the practical and the theory are two different things. On paper, Liverpool look absolutely sensational. But up to now, they've been not even close to absolutely sensational, but they've got the points.
Yes.
And whilst you're getting the points, it's more time to play the 11 you want to play and to try and get people like Wirtz through this tough spell and get some form. So that's kind of where they are. They've got to keep going, keep trying to get better, but it just shows you, when you make that many changes, regardless of the ability of the players, it's not quite as easy when you're putting it all together. It does take time, and whilst they're winning, that'll give Slot more time to stick with it.
You know, you don't have to be down on Liverpool, right?
I know. I know what you mean.
I think
it feels like that.
I know, but there's a lot of reason to be excited about Liverpool, and I think most teams around Europe would want to be in the position that Liverpool is in.
I guess I fell into the trap of the opposite of what I've just said about the practical and the theory.
Right.
I should have known better. I should have known
Well,
when you're bringing so many players into a team right off the bat, it's going to have teething problems. I should have known.
you did know better, of course, when it came to Eze, Stevie, so let's get this out of the way first.
there it is. All right.
Thank you very much.
Magnanimous.
Nedum, you missed out on this bet that I had with Stevie. I was like, God, without Odegaard, without Saka, of course Arteta's definitely going to start Eze. Why wouldn't he? And Stevie was absolutely right in the end, obviously. Arteta didn't go with Eze in the starting 11.
Nedum, he actually called me mad.
I did call him mad, and I was absolutely wrong. It's the first time you've been
not
on.
like you, Dan Thomas.
Yeah, I know. It's been the first time you've been on since obviously Eze made that move. Do you have any reservations about it at all, Nedum?
No, I don't have any whatsoever, to be honest. And I think obviously he didn't start in that game, but I think long term he's going to be the starter for Arsenal on that left-hand side. I think it's fair to say that from an Arsenal perspective over the last 2 years, like Martinelli hasn't really been able to sort of recapture that form that he showed, say, 3 years prior, where he was getting a few more goals. I think he got to like 10 Premier League goals, and he looked like more of a threat down there. I think at times on the left-hand side, the creativity just doesn't feel the same as it does on the right. When you see Odegaard going over there, Saka going over there, and, you know, a right-back like Ben White, for example, that used to be the key three. So I think Eze will be starting on that side and give them like a different look altogether at times, because he's not just going to be someone as a winger who just bombs down the wing. I think he'll be coming inside and linking up with some very, very good players, and you'll see a different side to him. So yeah, I think I've got no reservations whatsoever. I think he's in a place where he's very happy to be there. They're very happy to have him, and I think they'll play into his strengths, because some of the creativity that he has will suit the players around him, and ultimately it's a chance to push for a title, for an FA Cup, for a Champions League and so on. And I think he's the right player for them, because he changes them just enough to where you can see the benefit in the times where maybe they didn't have that type of player.
Meanwhile,
He was right, but not right enough for the Liverpool game.
I know. Stupid Arteta. Mark Ogden hasn't been on since the close of the transfer window. Oggy, I want behind the scenes as to what was going on in Manchester United for those final 48 hours.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously they were playing a strange game with the goalkeepers, because it looked like on what day were we on? It looked like Sunday that Emi Martinez was on his way to United, but they were preferring Lamans, and I'm kind of surprised at that, because for me, Martinez is what they need right now. They need somebody with the strength of character, with personality, with, you know, a world-class ability to sort the defence out and bring some kind of confidence there. But they believe that Lamans is the better bet. They also felt that the cost of doing Martinez on a short-term loan was too high in terms of wages. So they went with Lamans, and I think they could live to regret that. I think they've got a situation in goal where they've got nobody they can trust, and they brought a young kid in who has got a lot of promise, but I'd love to know right now who Ruben Amorim wants to play in the derby, because do you play two goalkeepers who've both let them down this season, who are both very, very weak and very dodgy at crosses, or do you throw a kid in on it for his debut in a Manchester derby? So they could have solved that problem by signing Emi Martinez, and, you know, you would have had no issues there whatsoever. In terms of getting players out, I think United did okay in the end. I thought they got Sancho out, they got Anthony out for a decent fee. They didn't get Tyrone Malacia out, but I don't think he was that big a deal anyway. He cost virtually nothing when they signed him. So overall, United have got the dead wood out, and we can be critical of United because they always make mistakes in the window. But I think we have to say that this rebuild, whether it's under Ruben Amorim or somebody else, the club are having to get rid of a lot of dead wood. A lot of that dead wood was brought by Erik ten Hag, who, I think Bayer Leverkusen saw right through Erik ten Hag after about 2 games. So it's a sense of getting jobs done, getting people cleared out quickly, so that the next window they can start building properly. It is going to take time, and I know we've said this over the years with Man United, it'll take time, but I think now finally they have a regime in that knows they have to turn it into a different direction, and they started doing that. But obviously they could have brought a midfielder in, they could have brought a better goalkeeper in, but I guess with the financial restrictions they've got, they did as best as they could with this window. But obviously there are still frustrations because they've still got gaping holes in the team that need to be filled.
Oggy, when you say they, who makes that decision not to bring in Emi Martinez, a World Cup winning Premier League experienced goalkeeper that you so desperately need?
That would be Omar Barada, the CEO, Jason Wilcox, the Director of Football. Obviously, that will be led by, ultimately, Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers. The Glazers are still, they still have a big voice at United because they still have sign-off on the transfers. So it will come down to the money. Now, Jim Ratcliffe, I'm told, is prepared or wants to be more aggressive in the market, almost to say, like, let's test the rules. Let's see how strong the Premier League are. And if we breach PSL, what are they going to do? Are they going to fine us? Are they going to dock us points? Because obviously, while all this is going on, Man City still haven't had their verdicts for the 115 charges. So there's a sense that Jim Ratcliffe wants to push harder. Everyone else at the club is saying, no, you have to be careful. You have to make sure we spend within our means. And United have done that. But if they'd spent another 60, 70 million pounds, they could have got a better midfielder. They could have got a midfielder in, and they could have brought Emi Martinez in as well as Senny Lamens, and had Lamens learning from one of the best in the world, but they chose not to. And like I said, they could live to regret that, because they haven't, for me, got a goalkeeper they can rely on yet this season.
Do you want to say something?
I was just thinking, you know, if I'm tell me if I'm wrong. I thought I heard Augie saying that they've got people in place that know what they're doing. Did you say that?
They've got people in place who are doing the job. Listen, even prior to Wilcox and Barada coming in, they didn't have people doing those jobs. So while Liverpool and Chelsea and Man City over the last 10 years have had people doing the jobs that grown-up football clubs have, United haven't had that. So they've actually got a structure in place now where there is accountability. There are people you say, that's his job, that's their job. There's a guy called Christopher Vivell on recruitment who was at Chelsea and at Leipzig. So they have people who are supposedly experts at their role, and they might turn out to be. But there was a vacuum before they arrived. So what I'm saying is they now have a structure in place whereby people who are doing jobs that other clubs have got people doing, United now have that. Prior to that, it was basically Ed Wood was play toy. It was Richard Arnold throwing money around, and it was chaos. So they've actually got people in place to do the job. So time will tell if they're doing it well or doing it properly.
Still no plan though. You can't turn around and tell anybody you've got a plan when.
And if there ever is a man with a plan.
Yeah. when with 2 hours of the transfer window to go, you're either going to sign an old geezer or a young geezer, and you it almost feels like they've tossed a coin and gone for the young guy. That's not a plan.
Yeah, but Steve, to be fair, no, listen. I tend not to give Man United much credit, but on this they had a plan which was to get Premier League experience in, which they did with Cunha and Bouma. They've done that. They've brought in a striker. The plan with the goalkeeper, maybe they had a plan. They were playing off Villa against Antwerp so they could get a better deal for Lamens. But if we're talking about clubs having a plan, why did Liverpool leave it until the very, very last minute to sign a centre-half, which they'd known they needed all summer? So even the best club in the business this summer has made mistakes in the market, in the transfer window. So, even Liverpool aren't perfect.
Well, that's not really true. They've been trying to get Guehi.
All right, go on, it's Liverpool TV, United TV. Do you want to chirp in as well? City TV on top? Go on, Nedum.
I'm not interested, Dan. No, I'm not bothered. Let them talk. Let them fight.
Who finishes higher, City or United, Nedum?
Oh, go away, Dan Thomas. Next question. Go away.
We'll say thank you very much to Mark Ogden, as always, much appreciated. A transfer talk web scrape? Well, why not? Take a look at what might be happening in January. What? Be sure to check out where it went wrong, or indeed right for some clubs, over on our website. Convo, of course. Alejandro. Now it's top. Now, reminder, that's how it works.
Top 6, 7th goes into a playoff.
Oh, and the playoff is against, what, New Zealand or someone like that?
No. It's a whole playoff system where you have 6 teams that enter that. And
okay.
Yeah, teams from CONCACAF, from CAF as well, from Oceania.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
But you should be all right.
Well,
if you finish 7th.
Let's get into the playoff first, and then we can get into the conversation as to how we get through the playoff.
Okay, more on Venezuela a little later on, as they, of course, are facing Argentina a little later on. Gustavo joins us. Gustavo, how are you, mate? Obviously, Brazil have already qualified. So what are the big questions that people want answered going into these round of matches, considering what? There's no Vinicius Jr.?
Yeah, no Vinicius Jr., no Rodrigo, no Neymar, some big names out of the squad of Brazil. Hello, everybody. Always a pleasure to be here. Well, between Carlo Ancelotti and Vinicius Jr., it was already planned. Ancelotti told Vinicius a lot of time before that he would give him a rest, because Vinicius is suspended for the match against Chile, and the next match is against Bolivia in El Alto with the altitude. So the option that took Carlo Ancelotti was to give him a rest, because he already knows Vinicius. He knows how he can play, what he can give for the Brazilian national team. So it was an option of Carlo Ancelotti.
Now, looking at this tie, obviously there's a lot of talk about Rodrigo's future as well, which is put to bed given the transfer talk window is shut. So tell us more about that, Gustavo. Was there ever any chance of him moving? Was there any interest from anybody else in Europe?
Yes, there was a chance because Manchester City was monitoring the situation of Rodrigo since a long time ago. Since the beginning, Manchester City has always been the club that monitored the situation of Rodrigo. There were some talks about Tottenham, some other clubs, but Manchester City was always the main club interested in Rodrigo. But the problem is that for Rodrigo to leave Madrid, it would be necessary a very high offer. And I think that it had never really happened, or it was never really close to happen. Rodrigo, he had some doubts about his role in Madrid. I think that with Xabi Alonso, he felt a little bit more important because at the end of the last season, he was not playing, he was not happy, and he really thought about to leave Madrid. But with Xabi Alonso, I think that his situation changed a little bit because Xabi is trying to make every player of the squad important. At least he's trying to make that every player of the squad feel that he's important for the season. So with everything that was happening around him, no really offer for Rodrigo, the decision was to stay in Real Madrid.
Is Ancelotti, being the coach obviously of Brazil, going to be a problem for Rodrigo going forward?
Yeah, I think that the situation of Rodrigo now it's really different from Vinicius because Vinicius is a starter for Brazil. Mm-hmm. There is no doubt about it, especially with Carlo Ancelotti. Rodrigo wants to play on the left. He wants to play on the left flank for Madrid, and of course that would be also for Brazil. And Ancelotti, when he explained the absence of Neymar in this squad, that's a technical decision because Neymar is not playing. Neymar has suffered with so many injuries. So when we look to Rodrigo at Real Madrid now, well, he started the second match, the second round against Oviedo. He didn't play any minute in the first match. Everybody remembers what happened in the Club World Cup. So I think that Rodrigo may be in a problem thinking about the World Cup. Vinicius didn't start the second match. He was starting the first and the third match in La Liga. In the last match, he was unbelievable. I think that Vinicius will have a very good season. So the talks between Vinicius and Real Madrid have stalled. Last May, they were close to an agreement. Vinicius earns nowadays 17 million euros net per year, okay? The offer made by Real Madrid was 20 million euros net per year, but Vini's camp expected a little bit more because during the talks, they were talking about 20 million euros net per year salary, fixed salary, plus 10 million euros bonus per year also. Something like Kylian Mbappé made, because the salary of Mbappé is around that. The difference is at the bonus. So what Vini's camp tried to make the agreement with Madrid was fixed salary, okay, 20 million euros, but we also want 10 plus million euros per year. And when they received the last offer from Madrid, it was only the 20 million euros per year. So now the talks between them have stalled. Vinicius has contracts until the next season, 26-27, and his agents don't believe that now to have 3 more years and to rise his salary only at 3 million euros, it's not worth now for them.
One last thing, like every time I see news about Neymar, it's negative in Brazil, obviously, with confronting the fans, both on the pitch and off the pitch. Is there any doubt that he should be in this Brazil squad? Because you say it quite confidently, Ancelotti wants him. How do the fans react to that?
There are many doubts about Neymar's situation nowadays when we talk about the Brazilian national team, because people who are watching the Brazilian championship don't see Neymar at the best level. He's even close to the best level. I can say now with no worries that Neymar isn't now the best player playing the Brazilian Championship. So he has suffered with so many injuries. He was out for a long time playing for Santos. Now he was out of the Brazilian squad because of a technical decision made by Ancelotti, including Neymar. He didn't like that. He said that in an interview that, well, I'm not injured. I'm out of the squad because of the coach's decision. So I think that for Neymar to be in the Brazilian squad, he's gonna need to play, to have many more matches. Consecutive matches, he needs to play, he needs to regain the best level of his football, because now he isn't playing at best level. I know that internationally, when we talk about Neymar, everybody asks, oh, why Neymar is in the squad? Because he isn't playing. He isn't playing so well now. He needs to play. He needs to be fit to play in the highest possible level. So the point now, the ball now is with Neymar. He needs to be ready for the national team and fit specifically.
Brazil, though, of course, have already qualified, as have Argentina, who are Venezuela's opponent. Should be easy then. Rock out to Argentina, beat them. Ali, take your 3 points.
Yeah, okay. Look, if you're Venezuela and you see what's going on with the qualifiers, you're depending a lot on what happens with Bolivia. Now, Bolivia play away to Colombia. What you want, if you're Venezuela, is for Colombia to beat Bolivia for 2 reasons. 1, because you don't want Bolivia to get any points, but 2, because then that puts Colombia into the World Cup already. How is that important? Why is that important? Because who does Venezuela play in the last match at home? Colombia. Once Colombia has qualified to the World Cup, they have nothing to play for. And so therefore, that would allow, or would give Venezuela the best chance possible to hang on to that 7th position. And of course, Brazil would do us a favor, now that Gustavo's here, please put in a good word, Gustavo, in going up to altitude in Bolivia and actually getting a result against Bolivia, so that Venezuela are in no danger. Venezuela have the pole position for that 7th place. They have the inside position, and it's really in their hands, and all the matchups seem to work out in their advantage, at least on paper. We'll see if that's the case. If they're 7th, then we don't have to stress until March, when the playoff comes about.
What percentage chance?
Of what?
Of them being in the World Cup in the summer would you give them?
Of them being in the 7th position?
To being in the World Cup in the USA in 2026.
I need to know who else is involved in this playoff. But right now we're at a 50-50, I would say, for Venezuela.
50-50? Is that about right, Gustavo?
Well, all I can say is that I'm with Venezuela. I want Venezuela in the World Cup. That's the point.
There you are, Gustavo.
I knew I liked you, Gustavo.
Yeah.
I knew I liked you.
Yeah.
Vamos, Venezuela!
There we go, Gustavo. Thank you very much.
Vamos.
Just a reminder, La Liga on a break then, as of course is all domestic football at the moment for the internationals that are coming up. It returns, though, September the 12th, Sevilla against Elche, and then on September the 13th, Real Madrid taking on Real Sociedad on the Saturday as well. Atleti, of course, still in search of their first win. They take on Villarreal. And then in theory, it's the first game at the new camp now. Barca taking on Valencia. Steve, were you on YouTube duty today?
Oh, yes.
What were you talking about? Anything exciting?
Soccer.
Liverpool shining.
Yes, all right. But
A little bit of Man City.
sell it a bit more.
Yeah.
You can check that out over on our YouTube channel. Welcome in, there's the latest edition of Extra Time. Ali's here,
nice
Stevie.
smile.
I know.
It's on
Nedum,
about.
who's just been ghosting us for the last couple of weeks. We say, Nate, can you come on today? No, I wonder why. Nothing to do, of course, with what Manchester City have been up to.
He was very angry today, very touchy.
Well, it was a little bit.
I know.
A little, yeah.
I mean, I can recognize it, I can see it.
Yes, but how are you, Nedum? You well?
No, yeah, I've never been better. City doing great. Nobody's trying to level that at me, so everything's great, Dan. Everything's fantastic.
See, I told you, edgy. Very edgy.
Can't let it go.
To the team, with Newcastle fans potentially being hostile to Isak, are there clubs that did not like you as a player? You went to watch a game at Old Trafford once, didn't you, Steve?
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
silly thing to do.
Yeah, a couple of times, yeah.
This is when you were in your pomp at Liverpool.
Yeah, let's just say I never got much of a welcome.
This is because Michael was a Manchester United fan, yeah?
Yeah.
And you tried to...
Yeah, my son was 8 years old at the time.
Right.
People were coming up to the car and banging on the windows and calling me all kinds of names.
You didn't think at any
Swear.
stage of going to Old Trafford this may not be the best plan?
Well, I kind of figured, and I should have known, I kind of figured that most people are adults and would be, particularly when you've got an 8-year-old boy with you, they're not going to stand in front of you and call you all kinds of names. But on that occasion, I was wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Did you say you went a couple of times?
Yeah.
You went back for more?
Yeah.
That's okay. Well, that's just dumb.
Well, my son wanted to go. What am I going to do?
Get Eleanor to take him or something.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Get him.
There's you.
Talking about.
What, you're there in your Crown Paints candy kit, whichever Liverpool
Well, that
gets
didn't
it
help.
off.
Having me kit my boots on didn't really help. And a Liverpool scarf around my neck.
Carrying all your trophies.
Yeah. I had all my medals pinned on my jersey.
So what did you think was going to be different the second time?
That people are going to be mature and grown-ups about this.
Well, it was a Champions League game.
Okay.
Which I guess doesn't really change anything, but no, I just figured that it wouldn't happen, but I was wrong again.
Yes. Nedum?
Yeah, so in terms of places that I've played, I think Newcastle fans probably don't like me too much, having played for Sunderland for that year. But one thing that they have in their favour is that they battered us at St James's Park. So they can almost see me and laugh at me.
Okay.
And then from a City perspective, I wasn't part of this City era, which is, you know, essentially done a lot better than United. So again, they can look at me and laugh at me. Then I played at QPR, the only team in West London not playing in the Premier League at the moment. So as you can probably see, there's a bit of a theme here.
Yes, there is.
Not really too bothered about what I'm doing. But there is one thing in particular, I think it was probably 3-4 years ago when I was at Wembley and I was there watching a Man United game. And there was a bunch of United fans get really angry at me because they were still frustrated that somehow City beat QPR in 2012 and feel like it was all my fault.
Yeah.
United should have won that league title.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I think most people are sane enough to not do anything too
Forget
crazy.
Joey
for that.
Barton. Forget Kun Aguero. It was all your fault.
I don't know whether I told you.
All my fault then.
Go on.
I once got a lift back in a Manchester United supporters bus from Old Trafford.
How did that come about?
I was at Sheffield Wednesday and I was going home, I was going back to Scotland, and I was trying to figure out how I could either get to the station or... And then I thought, you know what? Brian McClare was on the coaching staff at United. So I thought he's probably got somebody at the game from Glasgow. So I'll see if I can get a lift back to Glasgow and I'll get a train back to Troon from Glasgow. And he said, well, I don't have anybody coming particularly, he said, but there's a bunch of guys coming down from the West Coast, down here, down Dumfries, all that way, on a bus. There's going to be about 30 of them. I was like, oh dear, I don't know whether that's a good idea. But I thought, okay, the Scottish guys. And they were fantastic. They picked me up outside I got right out. Nobody said a word to me, by the way. I went right out the front door at United. Nobody even looked at me twice. Went with a guy, we got on the bus, drove back to Glasgow, and then he gave me a lift down to Troon because he was from
How
there.
tight are you, Stevie?
Well, how else was I going to get home?
Pay for a driver.
But people didn't do that sort of thing back then, Dan.
Right, they got on buses.
You generally would get a train.
Right.
So all you had to do was get a lift to the station.
Okay.
But he said, look, boys are all right, and they were fantastic.
Thanks, Stevie.
Got me, had beer and all kinds.
No.
Honestly.
Really?
Aye.
What a great experience.
Fantastic.
There you are.
They're all grown up.
I was drunk as a skunk by the time I got home.
Ali, was it mostly your own fans?
Well, yeah. I was about to say, both Stevie and Nedum brought up opposing fans. I was booed by the Venezuelan fans.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
Because I had apparently a relationship with the current coach. They didn't like the coach. They thought I was his boy and that I was protected by him. And so every time that we had an open training session ahead of a World Cup qualifier, and every time I touched the ball in that training session, I was booed by the stadium. And then and it took me a while, and I've said this before, I told the story before, is that it took me a while to figure out, it's like, oh, they're booing, but who are they booing? Because, oh, they're booing me. They're booing me. And that's, it's quite humbling. And at the same time, it may be annoying to some degree, and I just find it funny. I find it amusing. As like, I thought, they really think that I'm only on this team because of that coach that they hate.
And I think booing's going to help.
And it wasn't going to make me any better, booing me. I wasn't going to score any more goals.
That bar was...
I was what I was. Good Lord.
Stevie, does the failed transfer of Guehi to Liverpool affect the relationship between Glasner and the player, knowing that he had a hand in the transfer not going through?
I don't think so. I mean, he's a captain. I'll be shocked if him and Guehi don't get on like a house on fire.
Right.
And I really don't see Guehi doing anything other than continue to do what he's done. So yeah, I don't see a problem whatsoever.
Nedum, I'm not sure if you heard this story. Daniel Rodriguez of Mallorca has been stripped of the captaincy and suspended because he publicly complained that he didn't get to play against Madrid with his family in attendance. Have you ever invited your friends and family to a match but ended up just sitting on the bench?
Firstly, I need to say, obviously, there's some context to it, but that also sounds like one of the softest things I've ever heard. But yeah, to say have I invited family and sat on the bench, I got to a point where I was sitting on the bench so much I told family to stop coming to games. So I don't think I had that experience as such.
Right.
So yeah, I've not quite had it like that. I've had some disappointment in games which I wish I would have played in, but never from the standpoint of people coming down to watch me anyway.
I actually told one of my players, because his family was in the stand, that if he didn't stop showing off, I was going to take him off.
Oh, really? He was showboating for the old folks?
Aye. Trying all kinds of flicks and back heels and all kinds of
Which
stuff.
player was this?
That doesn't matter. I just got him at half time, got him in I just waited for him to disappear into the toilets, and I just basically went over and said, if you do that again, I'm taking you off, family or not.
And did he behave?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
There you are, Steve. It's funny thinking of you as like a real coach.
Yeah. Weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, it is
Serious.
Serious. Ali?
Now, I was thinking about when I was in my dying days at Chivas USA, and I knew that the party was coming to an end. I could feel it, and it didn't take much when you were at Chivas USA. It's where dreams go to die.
Right.
And
Be a good 30 for 30 on Chivas USA.
well, yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. Melissa, she wanted to come to the game, but the kids were young, and it's a whole thing when you bring in young kids to the game, and it's a whole production. I said, don't worry about it. Look, we're not going to the playoffs, whatever. I knew I was going to play anyways. I just wasn't sure as to what my future was going to be. And I think had she known that I was thinking about this being the end,
right,
she would have liked to have been there and see my last game.
Yeah.
It ended up being my last game just because of circumstances, but I think that's one that, I don't know that she really enjoyed going to my games to begin with.
Did she go to all of them?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then this one in particular, she didn't because, I don't know, maybe one of the kids was sick and it was a whole thing. I said, don't worry about it. Looking back, it's probably one of the games that she would have liked to have been a part of. And I don't know that she ever really loved coming to the games or loved the sport, but she knew how important it was to me, and she wanted.
Did she boo you as well?
Probably. Probably.
She started it.
Probably.
Did Eleanor go to all your games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, she was. You went. So because I was so superstitious, she would be the same sitting in the stand. So if the kids were there, well, they weren't kids then, my daughter had a baby and all, but they weren't allowed to move. Believe it was half time, or if we scored, or just all kinds of silly things.
Right.
That's what she was like up in the stand.
Okay.
Aye.
What about you, Nedum?
So for the first half of my career before she passed, my mum used to go to all my games. Basically went to every game that I'd ever played in from when she was alive. And then when I was at City, I had a box. When I was at Sunderland, I had a box. And then when we were at QPR for the first season, it was great. But then that next season, things were getting so toxic to where like I was picking and choosing who would actually want to come to the games. I was like, it's probably not a good idea to come because maybe there could be a revolt. Maybe you'll hear things you don't necessarily want to be hearing. And it was like weeks and weeks and weeks of this. So I think towards the back end of my career, there were times where I'd just say, I'm just going to go. It's work. It is what it is. But for the bigger games and the more emotional ones, then they were always there. For my last game, like all my family were there. I think for my last game at QPR, family were there as well. And it was nice to be able to walk out on the pitch with them afterwards and to share those moments and share those memories as well. So yeah, they didn't come to all the games, but they were definitely the ones that mattered the most.
My mum and dad went to 3 games.
Wow.
1 game at Ayr United, 1 game at Scotland, and 1 game at Liverpool.
That was it?
That was it.
Because
My dad golfed in the weekend.
because he played golf.
Played golf.
Wow. Was he related to
To whom?
Burley? Sorry.
Wait a minute. Wow.
Where's that going?
Wow.
Nedum, are all your kids City fans? No one's supported to United to spite you or anything?
No, there's no spite there. But I'll tell you a story. A couple of years ago, my son was doing like a football camp thing. And the coaches, I used to speak to them, and they're two big United fans. And they always used to try and wind up my son saying, oh, horrible City fan. And then my son said, I don't support City, I support United. And I was like, hold on a second, kid, what did you just say? He said, I support United. I was like, I beg your pardon? So that's when I realised that for me, he said that, but firstly I thought, what a naive child. And secondly, I couldn't actually spend money to get a United shirt for him. So what I did was I bought the red and black City shirt, and since then he's been converted.
Wow.
He's a City fan like his sisters, and that's the way it will be forever.
Goodness me. How long was Michael a United fan for?
Probably about 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the reason?
So when he was about 7, that's when Beckham and Scholes
the class of
and the whole
92,
class of
right.
92.
Right.
So everybody was into them.
Yeah, and
all the young
Liverpool,
kids.
Liverpool had what? Don Hutchinson.
Well, yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, it's
So for
quite the
that,
drop off. Quite the drop off.
yeah. So for like maybe two, maybe 3
Right.
years.
And you didn't go all Nedum on him and get angry.
Well, I figured that he would grow out it
Right.
because he would still come to our games
Right.
at home.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he did. All of a sudden, he was like, "What am I doing?" So,
I see. And now he calls you during games.
Oh, aye. He's a right punter.
Stevie, with all the recent money, with all the recent big money additions Liverpool has made, would it be considered a very disappointing season if they won the Premier League but got knocked out of the Champions League?
No. I'll be more than happy if they win the Premier League,
Yep.
regardless of what happens in the Champions League. So no, yes would be the answer.
Dan and Stevie, any chance Nedum's going to apologise on air for torching your City predictions? In case you missed this, Nedum was over here, wasn't he, pre-season, and we were saying, look, nothing's changed in the City's defence. And then
Yep.
he was like, did you not see the last 2 months?
Smug.
Everyone's back, everybody's fit, everything's fine. And obviously they start the season the way
You don't
they
know
did.
anything, Dan. You don't know anything.
Well, I don't know when Eze's going to start, to be fair. Nedum, Rodri's back, yet the problems remain. Is it down to the system or the player profiles?
I don't know. I think they'll get into it. I think for Rodri, it's his second start maybe since he did his ACL, so he's probably not going to be his absolute best. I think you're missing someone like a Phil Foden who could also get back to his best, considering they're two of the last 3 winners of the Premier League Player of the Season. There's probably a bit more ability there. So I'm not going to overreact to it, but also I'm not going to be apologising to you every week City don't win. But hopefully this will be the last chance that they can do that for a while. It's an early prediction. Let's see how things go, Dan Thomas.
You know Nedum is testy when he turns like 45-degree angle to the camera and then start head bobbing. Start head bobbing with
And you could just see a little gun.
Let me show you that I still got some guns here, Dan. Don't you worry about it.
Exactly, just keep those flexing. Me and Nedum were at the high school track
right,
when he
Thomas,
was
that's
here.
correct.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I know.
And what was he doing and what were you doing?
Oh no, that sounds like something it's not.
Nedum was doing sprints and they were very impressive.
He was walking the dog.
All right, and we must ask the question, why, Nedum? Why are you doing sprints?
Because I do Masters Athletics.
Yeah.
But also, speaking of Masters, this one's for you, Dan Thomas.
Go on.
I'm doing Masters football on Friday this week. So I'm sure there'll be
brilliant.
some clips worthy of the show
Wow.
loading up in the next few days.
God,
It's
who
gonna
said
be
no to
City,
that if
United,
you're invited?
Liverpool, and Everton. Listen, they could get whoever lived nearby, and I happen to live 15 minutes away. So yeah, long may it be a good event, Dan.
Oh, lovely, well, good.
We'll be able to see that Masters Athletics.
But it's on YouTube, isn't it?
I'll need to have a look at it.
There you are, beautiful.
Oh, no. Okay.
Who was better?
I'd like to watch that.
Who was better in the track, Nedum, Jan, or the fish?
My poppy.
Yes.
Nedum would lap the fish and Jan a lot, actually. Very fast. But he runs, he's got a very angry face
Yeah. Well,
when he's running.
and we've learned that about him. That there's a lot of anger.
There is both there, and it comes out, That is it.
It's this show. This show.
Enjoy the Masters. We're going to try to find that on Friday. ESPN FC returns to your screens tomorrow. What's happening tomorrow? Are you in?
Yeah.
I am
What
not.
are you going to talk about?
It depends what you ask me.
Well, I'm off.
Oh, well, none.
Soccer. A lot of soccer.
Tiger.